Welcome back. In the previous video, I introduced the embroidery recipe and the guidelines for quality embroidery. Let's take a deeper look. This session is excerpted from an hour-long class, and I can't possibly cover every slide in detail and still honor the time limit. You may need to pause the video from time to time to read all the slides. Although I'm not the family cook, I think that in many ways producing professional embroidery is similar to baking a great cookie. You need quality ingredients, from thread to fabric to design to stabilizers, in the right amounts, and you need the appropriate quality utensils, which for embroidery would include your machine, needles, and hoop. And you need proper technique. While cookies can crumble, embroidery too can effectively do the same. So let me ask you, have you ever had the perfect design, the most wonderful fabric, the most luscious threads, and the latest and greatest high-tech machine, but a bad result? If you've been embroidering for a while, it will happen if it hasn't already. If you don't know what caused it, how can you possibly fix it? So like anything else in life, a successful result is a matter of choice and method. And like life, we can't fully control everything in the process. Bad things can still happen. The point is, a professional-looking embroidery is not a matter of luck. Embroidery is a skill. Just because you have a machine doesn't make you an embroiderer. I have a kitchen. That doesn't make me a master chef. I should warn you though, if you're a perfectionist, machine embroidery may not be right for you. Perfect embroidery with every stitch precisely placed and no imperfections is simply a myth. Fabric distorts. As the needle and bobbin threads intersect to create stitches, they create tension and can pull unstable fabrics. The needle may be deflected by other stitches or coarse heavy fabric threads and may not precisely place a stitch. The thread might loop, even with the most ideal tension settings. You need to realize that embroidery is so much more than a good design. Just accept that all embroidery will have subtle flaws and that each one will be unique. So just because we have to accept that embroidery won't be perfect, it is absolutely possible to have quality embroidery. I mentioned the quality formula in the previous video, and here it is again. It took me over 360 pages in my book to cover the embroidery recipe and this quality formula, so there's no way I can go that deep in this short video. Pause the video if you need to review it again. The quality formula starts with a well-prepared design because it's virtually impossible to make a poor design look good. That said, it's incredibly easy to make a good design look bad. Take this little crocodile design that I renamed Reptile Dysfunction. He's a well-digitized design, so what's his problem? He was stitched on polar fleece with a crisp tearaway. Once the fill stitches had perforated the stabilizer, the fabric was no longer supported and therefore stretched, and the result is gapping. In the book, you'll see the same design stitched onto the same fabric with the appropriate stabilizer, and there's no gapping at all. When you start making substitutions in either the quality formula or the embroidery recipe, you can have unintended results. Don't skimp on cheap ingredients, whether it's designs, threads, needles, or anything else. When you're getting started, you especially need to use designs from reputable digitizers. Would you rather spend a few bucks on a design or waste your time and ruin a project? I'm thoroughly convinced that good old Murphy has a special set of laws for machine embroidery. Starting with a well-digitized design is only part of the quality equation. If you know the design is from a reputable source, take a look at your technique and other ingredients before you start blaming the design. You've seen one example of incorrect ingredients already. What else can go wrong? Well, here's a short list of possible and unfortunately common problems. And you can just read down the list there. This little puppy is also suffering from the same dysfunction as our croc, wrong stabilizer for the fabric. To make things even worse, I've color sorted it. If you don't know what color sorting is or what it can do to your design, I cover it in the book and also in a free blog post that you can find on my website. So how can you tell by looking at a design online if it will sew well? Well, you can't. And if the design is just a 3D screenshot as opposed to a scan of a sewn design or a photo of a project, you won't even know if it's ever been sewn at all. It's important to understand that there's simply no such thing as a one-size-fits-all design. Applique is probably the closest you'll come. If you were to stitch a white snowman on a red towel, that red will definitely show through the white thread. Adding more stitches is not the answer, but applique might be. When looking at a design, consider the following characteristics: size, color, stitch types, stitch density, layering. Some of these you're going to need software to actually see. And how is it going to be used? Is it freestanding lace, or is it direct embroidery? Is it applique? Those are things you need to see before stitching. Now, once you understand a few basics, you can determine some things about whether a design is appropriate for your project. Here you can see a variety of designs. Since we're really short on time, I'm not going to discuss each one like I do in a longer class. You can learn more about each one in the book. So are you beginning to see how your choices make a difference? Embroidery lasts the lifetime of the garment, for better or worse, till death do us part. Unfortunately, it's more like a tattoo than a marriage because it's going to probably leave a scar when it's removed. Here you can see needle damage from a ballpoint needle on piqué after I sewed a design and the bobbin thread was never picked up. It happens. Make your selections thoughtfully. A bad combination may have shortened the lifetime to too soon after it comes out of the hoop, and you don't want that. So while I started out talking about the design, because that's how the formula starts, fabric may be the real key to how well your project turns out. Here are some factors you need to consider, and I go into considerable depth in the book on each one. For now, just understand there are a lot of variables in the equation. The number one question I get in my 2 Craftsy classes is, what stabilizer should I use? And they name some design and some fabric, and well, it depends. You've already seen 2 examples of wrong choices, and here's a third. This thin knit needed a cutaway, but the one I used is both too heavy for the weight of the knit and too visible from the front. In the book, you'll find lists of questions to help you determine the right combination of ingredients for the project you have in mind, and you'll also find a variety of useful charts to help you narrow down the appropriate combinations. So I like to think about embroidery as playing matchmaker. How compatible is your fabric and design? Just because you like each one independently doesn't mean they'll go together. So Dirty Harry wants to know, do you feel lucky? I think we answered that question at the beginning of this session. It's more than just luck. So in part 1 of this class, I showed you my binder where I stored test sews. This is the form I used, and it's included as a separate PDF with the book, so you can print it as you need it. Just fill in whatever information you want. You don't have to track everything. Store it in a plastic slip sheet with your sew out, and you'll have it for future reference. So the formula said a properly maintained and tuned machine. And this means keeping it clean and happy, basically. Your machine will keep you happy and productive if you keep it happy and well-maintained. We're pushing the time limit here, so just pause the video on the next few screens so you can read all the bullet points I've listed. Tension problems can totally ruin an otherwise perfect sew-out by causing looping, poor registration, and puckering. There's a whole chapter in the book on tension. This H-test is included so that you can test your machine using your current threads and settings. The arrow in the image points to where there's no needle thread visible on the back, which might mean bobbin thread has pulled to the top. Managing tensions is important, and you may need to adjust them for different thread types and weights to avoid tension headaches. In this sample, the puckers happened when I switched from rayon to polyester thread. Do you know why that might happen? Check the chapters on tensions and threads, and I'll tell you. The bobbin is critical for proper stitch formation. Most machines these days can use pre-wound bobbins. Just make sure you get the right size. The bobbin center pin may enable your machine to use more common sizes. Needles are surprisingly high-tech devices and are the only part of the machine that comes into contact with the needle thread, the bobbin thread, and the fabric. The golden rule for needle selection is to use the smallest, sharpest needle that can carry the thread through the fabric without damage to the thread, needle, or fabric. And always use quality needles. So the right thread for the job. How many of you have felt like this when a thread shreds or breaks excessively? Yeah, me too. When getting started, you may be tempted to save money by skimping on thread. Don't! Cheap thread shreds, breaks, and can just look ratty after sewing and may even fade with laundering. While rayon and polyester are most popular, I talk about some really fun threads in the book and also my Craftsy class, Thread Savvy. So smoothly hooped. I've seen so many bad hooping techniques. It just makes me want to scream. There's an art to proper hooping, and it takes practice. I know hooping isn't fun or easy, but know this. The hoop is a vital part of the stabilizing system. If you float everything, you may be sacrificing some of the stability. I have videos on my YouTube channel where you can watch a complete hooping process, so go check them out. Now, never rush the hooping process. On the other hand, don't hoop until you're ready to stitch and unhoop when the sewing is complete. There are hooping aids that make hooping quicker, easier, and more accurate. My favorite is this Echidna hooping station. These were so popular that we've been out of stock for several months while the factory retooled. We'll have them back in stock on October 1st, and you can order any time after that date. Wow, we've covered a lot of territory very quickly, and there's so much more I want to share with you. Visit my special expo page to find out about all the expo specials, and be sure to take advantage of the special limited time coupon to get the book at $10 off. There are also some links to some freebies there. Sign up for the newsletter and get a free set, and get the latest news on new content, new products, and new specials. So I always like to summarize a class with these few comments. Now, I'm a Star Trek fan, and Captain Picard always said, make it so, #1. So that's what I want to tell you. Make it so, or you won't know. A digital file is not an embroidery. It's a pattern. So you might have tens of thousands of designs on your computer, but they aren't embroidery until you stitch it out. And remember, there are two kinds of embroiders, those who test and those who wish they had. You don't want to be one of the latter. While perfect embroidery is elusive, quality embroidery is perfectly attainable and should be expected. And remember, a mistake is only a word. It is not a life sentence. The key is to learn what caused it and how to prevent it, thus making you a better embroiderer. And that's why you need the Embroidery Recipe book. So visit my blog. I have over 100 articles, all related to machine embroidery, and I'm always adding more. I have a full online shop with designs, threads, gadgets, and ebooks. Sign up for the newsletter and be notified of new stuff. You get a free collection just for signing up. So I always announce new blog posts, new videos, new products, new sales, and of course, new freebies in the newsletter. You can find me at my blog, on Facebook, on my YouTube channel, and I'm a real Pinterest junkie, and it's not just my stuff. I collect a lot of stuff on Pinterest. So come join me, and thanks for watching. Thanks for coming to the expo.